Welcome,
everyone.
everyone. I love how we did that, Tiffany. On cue.
Well, we're chipper this morning, aren't we?
Yes, very suitably caffeinated.
I don't know about that part, but I'm trying. I'm trying.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you're joining us from. And welcome to the third and final episode of our fall follow up event on Burnout, the Silent Pandemic. A conversation that Tiffany and I have been having since March of this year. And that was Burnout was a central theme of our fourth annual Future of Work conference. And given the nature of the topic and given the feedback we received during the conference, it was but natural for us to do a follow-up conversation and keep the topic front and center, and continue to help our community, support our community in all ways that we can. Tiffany, what's top of mind for you as we start our conversation today?
I'll say that anytime I spend with you is amazing. Hey, Nola, I see Nola. Nola is a Twitter friend who I gained, and we've gotten to know each other pretty well now on LinkedIn. But I love that we started with laughter. I mean, it is the weekend, so we're probably feeling a bit lighter anyway. But anytime I get to spend with you is great. But I think the fact that we just were like, hey, we're both going to just greet everyone and just like do the thing and get to giggle. I think, when we're talking about burnout, and there's a lot of moments where you don't laugh, right? And where you feel overwhelmed and you just are snarky and whatever. And we'll get into that with our stories, I'm sure. But I think for me, it's like the space, right? And I know some of our guest speakers in the last two episodes talked about that. So it's gratefulness and just presence, right? Like presence, the sun shining. And I'm just really grateful for that. Hi,
Thank
Audra. She's my
Yes.
friend as well.
Wonderful. Hi, Nola. Hi, Audra. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
And you know, for those of you that are joining us live here, first of all, thank you for sharing your weekend, for choosing to share your weekend with us. And let us know where you're joining us from and what is it about burnout, that any questions that you have or thoughts that you'd like to share, please chime in, and we'll take your questions as we go along, and we'd also love to hear from you otherwise. And we will also be adding the links to previous conversations in the show notes later on. So do stay tuned for that as well. For me, Tiffany, it's the same thing. I think I absolutely enjoy our partnership. It's I was thinking about it. It's coming up to, I think, 4 years.
It is. I've been
Yes.
thinking about it too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been such a pleasure to partner with you. I enjoy our friendship, our collaboration, how aligned we are in our values with what we do with in our respective businesses, and how we focus on supporting our community. And here we see. Oh, wonderful! Thank you, Nola. Thank you, Gail.
Oh.
Yeah. And so the reason we started talking about burnout in the conference, one of the reasons is as the world was sort of recovering, and I say that it's a very loaded word, from the pandemic, because we know just yesterday I was reading a post, and the author had said that the pandemic has a long tail, and that really hit me, because while from a disease standpoint it may be contained, the impact that it has had, it does have a long tail, right? And I think burnout is one big aspect of it. And when Tiffany and I, we started talking about what are some things that are affecting everyone, regardless of who they are, where they come from, but particularly disadvantaged groups, including women in the workplace. Burnout really rose up to the top, and that's why we focused on that. And I personally think that burnout is a silent pandemic, and it has been around for much longer than we care to admit or realize.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that the World Health Organization actually has a definition as of 2019 for burnout, and it calls it a workplace phenomenon, right? So it's not even classified as a disease per se, but the way we experience it, it is like that. And so during the conference, we had speakers and practitioners and authors and researchers share techniques that help us at an individual level. And that's the other thing about burnout. It is treated as though it's an individual responsibility, but it's really a systemic issue.
Mhm.
And we explored that aspect of it during the conference. We looked at what is it that we as individuals can do to navigate this, to manage this. And see, look at the words that I'm using, right? Navigate and manage, which means that it's a struggle to try and prevent it, and that's been my experience as well. And in the follow up, we spoke with guest speakers Lee Al and Leanne Elliott, who are small business owners themselves and also the hosts of Truth, Lies, and Workplace Culture podcast. And they shared a very cool framework with us, and it's available on replay, so you can go and watch it. And then we met with Sally Clark. That was in November, and Sally is an author, researcher, and well-being expert, and she also shared her framework with us that was focused on burnout prevention and recovery. And Tiffany, may I invite you to share a little bit more about these frameworks and what you took from that?
Yeah, I think similar to how we started laughing earlier, it's like that presence and the gratitude. They started us off kind of with mindfulness, this 5 minute flush out exercise, I believe is what they called it, and
Yes.
the importance of taking space. And one of the things that I love about partnering with you, being your friend, um, your coaching style, all that is around the power of the pause. And
Yes.
so that's something that's really important to incorporate into your day. And as I started going through my burnout journey, that was something, that I learned full well to do. So I felt like that was such a gift that we got from them, about taking those pauses. And then they had their our is it RX7, R times seven?
Yes.
Yeah, they're
RX7.
the model to thriving at work. And that was super interesting. We won't go into a deep dive because they could do it much better than we could, but that was a fascinating framework. And then Sally Clark, too, you kind of highlighted and touched on this at the beginning when we started the live, but she talked about language and how our language is so important, how we
Mm,
identify, how we normalize what we talk about. And she talked about reduced professional efficacy.
mm,
And how, what resonated with me with that is like how tough it is to recognize sometimes, because burnout's sneaky, and
yes.
how, once we recognize it, then we can reconcile with it. And she spoke about those of
Mm,
us who are high achievers. I know that you and I both are, and many of you listening probably are, how, we need to really watch out for that, because we may be more prone to that. And then finally, the other thing I want to talk about is she talked about this and approach, where
mm,
that really, really hit me, because I'm like, I was having a conversation with someone several months ago, and I was like, and I was sharing about that very thing, about how it's always all these demands that we have on us, and
mm,
then it's this, and then it's this, being a daughter, a wife, a sister, an
yes.
entrepreneur, all the partner, all the things. And so there's this hyper vigilance that comes into play, and how we really need to be mindful of that, but we don't have to do it alone. And so those were my takeaways in those
Mm,
powerful couple episodes.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Tiffany. And
Yeah.
I'm seeing some comments here in the chat as well. We're going to get to that in a minute. I wanted to, something that came up for me when you talked about the and Tiffany is, and this is something I've been mindful of and I'm watching myself.
Mm,
You're absolutely right. We have many roles that we play, many hats that we wear. And I think as women, we do that. It happens to us more, I would say. And it's a combination of societal expectations, um, biases at play, and gendered roles and responsibilities.
mhm,
There is so much of that. But Something that I've been watching and calling out myself is how much of it is created by me, where I feel like I have to do this and this and this and this in order
Mhm.
to whatever framework of success has been fed to me, I'm subscribing to that.
Mhm.
And so I've realized that a large part of regaining my peace really is identifying what success looks like for me,
Mhm.
and not just subscribe to whatever is out there, because then I'm kind of trying to run somebody else's race. And understanding, taking the time to really figure out what success looks like for me, and what am I okay not having or not achieving. That's been a very powerful question for me myself.
Mhm.
And so when I find myself sort of gasping like, oh my god, I've got to I've got to do all these things, I realize that I'm focused on all the doing, and then somewhere I lose myself and what I stand for or what I want to represent in that, because I'm caught up in the world's definition of success, and I'm
Mhm.
constantly trying to meet some sort of invisible bar, if you will. Um, so coming to terms with that and really saying, okay, this is all I want to do right now, and this is my definition of success. It may not fit in with the generally agreed criteria, but I think a large part of me being okay with that, has helped me a lot, especially in my life as a solopreneur in the last 4 years.
Yeah, and letting that be enough. Our enough is enough, right? And
Yes, I
what
love that. Our
what
enough
you
is
s-
enough.
what you said reminds me too of when we talked to Sally. She mentioned about the business card and what society's
Yes.
expectations of climbing the ladder and what her business card should look like. But we have to define that for ourselves. And I know there's probably, I mean, I'm seeing these comments, but there's probably a lot of people out there who feel the same way because that is what society and these systems tell us, especially when we belong to certain groups that these systems were not built for, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so, and that's a whole nother level of emotional, frankly, trauma
Mm.
that comes with sometimes working in these spaces that we feel like we have to fit into,
Yes.
and we're processing at different levels, which becomes another level and another thing to just add to the burnout.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm seeing a question here from Audra.
It's a good question.
Yeah. Does burnout earlier in life look different than later in life? How do you start acknowledging it's happening before it became a health and relationship wellness challenge? What's your take, Tiffany?
I was going to ask you for yours, but I think this is such a powerful question, and we do love a good, powerful question here, Meenakshi and I. Um, I think it could. I know for me, I think our careers, which is so much sometimes a part of our identity, our family life and the changes, whether we're caretaking for someone, we start a new family, our family's taking shape in different ways. I think that can enhance it because there are certain stressors, and stress is usually the precursor to burnout, but we don't always recognize that
Mm,
it's happening because it slowly can happen. It can happen really quickly too, based on different life events. But I think it does look different. I mean, I think back to so I've shared with many people. I'm on my second marriage, and in my first marriage, I was really young, and I think having had some of the circumstances I have now, like I think maybe I wouldn't have been able to identify them, but back then I think I was like a lot more resilient in certain ways, but in a lot of ways now I'm a lot stronger and I can't
mm,
bounce back. But yet I've been through 3 rounds of burnout. I think I'm also in a mentally more stable place. And have learned to embrace that and the ups and downs. And so I think that makes a difference too. But I think, to your question and your point, Audra, it's the acknowledgement that happens that really is the game changer.
mm.
I'd love to hear what you're thinking about this. Thank you for that question, Audra.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great thought-provoking question there. I agree with you, Tiffany, in that, at least in my experience, also, burnout looks different in different points in my life. It has looked different in different points in my life. Um, and it's, to me, it's also a combination of what else is going on
Hmm.
in my life in addition to my professional life. And so the combination of all my life circumstances really determine the kind of burnout, the intensity um, of it, and how quickly am I able to recover or not. So that's been my experience. Um, I think earlier on when it happened in my life, I don't even think I knew it was happening. Number one, and two, I didn't have the, and because of that, I didn't have the vocabulary. So I don't know what caused what, right? So I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't know that such a thing exists. All I knew was that um, if you, I was raised to take work very seriously. Work is worship kind of mentality.
Mhm.
That's how I've seen my parents do it, and so to me, I didn't know to be any other way. I didn't know there were other options, and so I don't think I had the vocabulary for it, even if I had experienced burnout earlier on in my career and life. The second part of your question, how do you start acknowledging it? It's happening before it became a. I honestly did not. So for me, I had to experience burnout, all of the negative impacts of burnout for me to realize that, oh, this is what's I'm probably in burnout. And it is not until recently when I read all the literature and the research that goes behind it, I realized, oh, there were these, I was able to identify it in retro, but not as it was happening. I will say that uh, all of the self education, the reading and research, my own research has helped me become better at identifying it now. And so I can give you an example. As a solopreneur, and Tiffany knows this, we are a team of one more often than not, right? So all of the responsibilities of running a business and for me it's a virtual business. There's a lot that goes in. So be it your financial planning, your marketing, your social media management, content management, content writing. There's so much. This is all in addition to delivering the work, right? Once you acquire the client. So there is so much going on that these days I've become very much better, and it's a journey. So let me say it this way: I'm becoming better at identifying when I get into this doing mode, and it's okay for me to be in the doing mode. But then if I overdo the doing, I constantly check in with myself in terms of what's the energy that I'm experiencing, and what is the energy that I'm giving out to others. And I do that sort of energy audit, if you will. And that's helped me a lot the moment I start realizing that uh, I have to remind myself what is the reason why I started on this path that I founded North Star Solutions and Services. And it is to create impact, it is to create a different kind of life for myself, and to really have positive and pleasant experiences for myself and for my clients while doing my work. So, really, to have that joy in what I do. And when I check in with myself, and if I find myself going astray from that original vision that I had, it's a great call out for myself, and I try to kind of take a pause and shake myself out of it and focus on my being for a bit, re-energize myself and get back to it. And this is where what I said earlier about what is it that I'm okay with not having or not achieving. I answer that question very frequently, and that helps me stay grounded. But to get to that point, I did go through a health and relationship wellness challenge. And I love the way you put that, because when I quit, I was working close to 20 hours a day. And across different time zones, it was untenable, and I had done it for about 3-4 years by that time, and that's what led me to one day I think everything came to a screeching halt, and I had to question, is this the kind of life that I want to lead? And I want to say one more thing before I turn it back to you, Tiffany. My biggest turning point before I started Northstar Solutions and Services was that my entire life, you remember I talked about how I was raised and the kind of work ethic my parents had. Uh, my mom, she never worked outside of the home, um, but she was up at 3:30 in the morning and she worked her backside off the whole day, taking care of all of us. All of the work that was done, she did it by hand at home, right? So, and my father worked, had a job. So, uh, not having questions, so knowing, not knowing any other way of being, this was the only way I knew. And when I grew up, and my mom, the way she raised me was, focus on your education, get your college degree, and you need to get yourself a job, and you need to be financially independent. Those are all the things she wanted for herself, and she couldn't have those, and those were her dreams for me. So the all I knew was to make work your focus of your life, and you build your life around the kind of work that you had. And that's what I had done for the first 25 years of my professional life, until things started breaking down. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, this is not going to work out. And so the focus shifted from, okay, what kind of a life do I want for the next phase of my life and career? And how can I find the kind of work that is fulfilling, that's meaningful, and still able to support the kind of life I want to build? And I know it can sound very out there, and it was for me when I first started thinking about it. And here's where I always remind myself and everyone to, take stock of all the privilege that you have, because I know I'm sitting on a ton of privilege. That's what is allowing me to do the work that I do, and allowing me to even have these kind of thoughts to say, okay, this is what I choose to do. And I'm very aware that if I were in a different life situation, I would still be at my last job, because there was nothing wrong with it. It's just that it stopped serving me beyond a certain point in time. So I know I said a lot there. The point is building that self-awareness, checking in with ourselves, and pausing, making sure that we build in pauses in our days, at certain times, and being mindful of it. It sounds a bit frou-frou, but it's very valuable to do that, because if we don't check in with ourselves, we find ourselves on autopilot, and then we are living somebody else's life. And then I think that's like a sure short way to burn out.
Thank you for sharing that. And again, Audra, for the question, I think, one of the things that you touched on that I love is this generational piece. And right now we're experiencing currently, which I don't know when that'll be, the next time that'll be that it's this way, but that we have the most generations in the workforce.
Yes.
And so I think the interesting thing is like how we were raised, what the norms were in the work. And even, when we look at the work that we do and how far things have come since Industrial Revolution, the things that we were taught, because I was raised the same way: get your education, you got to go to school, you have to, get a job, you have to climb the ladder.
Yep.
And I do think that the generations that came before us, often it's, we are living under their aspirations for not only us, but for themselves. And so there's this extra pressure. And then when you become a solopreneur, and even when you start to build a team, you come into building a business under the auspice of, I must have better. Everything must look a certain way. And so in your business, you start to go, okay, what are the milestones? And we tend to try to put it on a vertical trajectory, forgetting about what's happening in between. And it's the same thing for folks who are working, who are, business owners. And because that is how we've been conditioned. And when I think about looking back, tracking back to how kind of round 1, round 2, round 3, each round of burnout was a little bit different, but there were signs there that I should have seen, unless and until, like you said, I became educated. I started pulling the right folks around me to learn and did the research. And every time you get a little bit better at, ooh, how'd that go? And then I started shaming myself, like, how did you let this happen again?
Mhm.
But when you're so deep into it and it just like creeps up and all the life factors, and you're trying to do this and hold this together, and you're trying to help care for other people, all of the roles that we play, especially as women, it is it is a lot. And so I missed some of those markers, but I think, we have to be able to identify that for ourselves and assess, what is it that we want, and letting our enough be enough, as I said before,
Mm.
which is just something that was quite frankly lacking. But the overwhelm and all the things that you listed out that we have to do as solopreneurs, like even when we work with a coach and even when we have a team, there's still a lot of responsibility and things you have to think about as a business owner. And all those hats and the overwhelm. In fact, you and I, like, I had the opportunity to coach with you, and I remember just the roadblocks that I felt and the
Mm.
overwhelm and the just like, so thank you for helping me get unstuck. But it was just it's a lot. Sometimes it's a
Yeah,
lot, and that's why we need support, and why I say that, you're never alone in this. Like, do not just like let yourself drown in it. We can always have others to help pull us out.
absolutely, absolutely. And what you shared, it's actually segues to this question from Gail.
Hmm.
Thank you, Gail. Can burnout affect entrepreneurs and small business owners in a more intense way than if you were an employee?
Great question.
Yeah, yeah. I want to say it's a bit of yes and no for me. I think it's really, I've been both. And it's a different type of burnout, I think it is.
Mhm.
Because you're worried about different things when you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur and than when you are an employee. And it also depends on the industry you're in and things of that nature. So for me, in my experience, as an employee, the thing I wasn't worried about was, the income piece. It was because it was a fixed income.
Mhm.
But given today's uh, volatile job market, I don't know if that's true any longer. There is no such thing as job security anymore. At least in the tech world, that's the world I come from. So I don't know how far that's true anymore. But at least for as long as you have a job, you don't have to worry about how you're going to make that money, right? And as a solopreneur, for me, that is a constant source of worry because you have to work on the marketing, you have to build your pipeline, you have to build your client base, and then on top of that, like I said earlier, deliver the work as well. And it's that constant cycle.
Mhm.
And depending on where you are in your journey, you may or may not be able to hire folks to do the marketing or do your admin work for you. So, like, for example, for me personally, I am not yet at that point where I can hire people to on a continual basis to do some of this work for me. So that causes stress. So I wouldn't call it burnout. I think for me, it's a source of stress. And yes, I know chronic stress can lead to burnout. I'm not there yet, but I'm watchful and I'm mindful of where I'm headed. The one other thing I do want to add here from my personal experience is, what am I trading off on? That's something that I think about.
Mhm.
So, as a solopreneur, I am really able to live out my purpose. I'm very clear on what I want to do, who I want to serve, and I know that my work does create that impact. So, in my line of work, I'm a professional coach, and I've spent my entire career in the technology space in different roles, and I understand that world, and I understand what the intersection of people, business, and technology looks like. And that's why I've been intentionally chosen this line of work as a coach and consultant, and with a specific focus on mid-level leaders, women in tech, and then folks like myself who speak English as an additional language. And I know that this level of focus is not something I can bring about if I were an employee.
Mhm.
And I have lived that life where I knew exactly how I could create the best possible impact for my organization, for my employer, but they weren't willing to see it. So then I am forced to not utilize my strengths and not leverage my strengths the way I see best fit in a way that it'll benefit the organization, but I have to give in to the choices that are made by my employer.
Mm.
And I had reached a point in my career where that was unacceptable to me. And again, there is the privilege of, I am not the sole uh, earner in the household, so there's some sort of support and things like that. But because of which I was able to make this choice. So that's the point, right? So what are you trading off on as an employee versus a small business owner or an entrepreneur? Getting clarity on that has helped me make the decision. And even till today, I do subcontract work so that I have at least one source of a little bit of steady income. So how are you making those choices? That has an impact on how intensely you feel the stress or the burnout.
Mm. I I literally, like, I know it's chilly outside, but I got chills from what you said because, and I agree. And Gail and I have a lot of conversations in this realm too. And I love that you're calling out, Gail, the intensity, because it is like, I do feel like, I think it's a yes and no for me too, because you do feel the intensity um, more, I think, because of the responsibility and what what can come of that. And I too have the benefit of having a spouse who
Mm-hmm.
encourages me, inspires me to be able to do this um, in the way that I need to, and to grow it at a pace that's sustainable. Which is something, even just saying that out loud just now, that I don't think I realized even through all those rounds of burnout. Um, but I also think that I'm really resonating with what you said, Meenakshi, around the piece about the impact. And when I went
Mm,
through one round of burnout, probably round one and two of the three, that joy, that impact that you talked about, we don't realize that when that's missing, and if we're not walking in purpose in what we're doing, that can contribute tremendously. And it was only until actually, Jennifer, we had her as part of our conference. It
mm,
was only until I went to one of her webinars that I realized that that is exactly what I was feeling. So, to your point of doing the research, understanding what the signs are, I was like, oh my gosh, this is part of why I'm feeling this way, is because I'm not excited. I need to move bodies of work around to do the work that I set out to do. And
mm,
as an employee, that that amongst all the hours, amongst the misalignment of things, is like, I know that I can make more impact outside of this organization because I'm not, my values aren't being honored. I am being pushed into this box. This is the lane you have to stay in. You're not going to rise because you're making too much noise, you're disrupting too much. All of those things that I was doing toward a greater good and a greater end that weren't respected and
mm,
appreciated. I didn't feel seen or valued, heard, or appreciated. And so it's like, okay, I had the privilege to be able to do this.
mm,
And I'm grateful despite how tough it is. So I would encourage folks to look at the work that you're doing, and is this what you want to do? What shifts need to happen? And we recognize sometimes you do have to stay in a certain role, and the market is pretty volatile right now. But to be able to identify for yourself either an exit strategy, yes, I did just say that out loud. Like, if you want to engage and retain your folks, you have to do certain things, employers. And we can't shame people for leaving us. We have to walk what we feel is right in a role in our lives, because work is not our entire life. It's just not. Those days left us
yep.
a long time ago. And those employers who think that that's the be all end all, that's not human centered leadership. And so, that would be my thing I put out there too, is to really look at, how you're treating folks, and as individuals in an organization, how, is this serving you? Does this organization
Mm,
lend to your values?
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. I see Audra's comment here. Thank you, Audra.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
question.
yeah, and keep the chats coming. Something you said, Tiffany, it reminded me of this. I don't know where I read this, but I constantly remind myself of this. You know, you have to do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do,
Yes. Love it.
right? And I think that's been the driving force for my decisions around leaving my full time job and then starting North Star and then sticking with it for in my own way, right? And that's the other thing. I do want to talk about this whole an aspect of burnout that, in my mind, is caused by comparison.
I was hoping you were about to go there because I was going to ask. Ooh, let's get into it.
Yeah. So you go ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that was an invitation,
Oh,
but and all I'll say quickly is what came up for me when you said that is that if you had a business or you have a side business or you are moving back into a traditional role from a business, do not let society shame you about that. So many people, I've talked to multiple entrepreneurs, like you said, we have to do what we have to do until we could do what we can do. And I think, so many people feel shame that like I need to do this. Like if you put all of your things into the basket and you gave it your all and you need to do what you need to do to have the lifestyle you live and to thrive, do what you have to do and don't compare yourself to other people or let somebody else tell you that you have to do what you have to do. I love my business. I want to continue impacting in this HR and culture DEIB space. But if something shifted in my life and I needed to make a different change, that's what I would do. So I would
mm,
say that because I feel like there's a lot of feelings about that out there and a lot of people who are, kind of shaming people for that. So that's what I would
mm.
add. And I see Gail's great point there too, 100%. After vitamins. Well, you got Barbados on, Gail, so I know you're getting your vitamins.
So true, so true. And this is where, going back to self awareness, understanding what drives us, what drains us, what energizes us, um, what environment do we need to do our best work,
Mm-hmm.
unfettered. I think that's the key. And we don't, unfortunately, none of the systems we inhabit encourages us to spend that time. But if you go back to ancient wisdom, there was a lot of value placed on solitude.
Mm-hmm.
And for this reason, because when you do spend that time with yourself, in retrospection, introspection, it really it provides a lot of answers. See, our body physically and emotionally it's one of the it's probably the most intelligent system in the universe, and we spent sort of the least amount of time with it, I think,
Mm.
right? And that, to me, that sort of causes a lot of these problems, and it aggravates it as well. So going back to understanding what is it that we stand for, what is it that does not float our boat at all, and being very clear on that, that can, and that's what will help us build the foundation of the kind of life we want to live, right? And not feel pressure to live it by other standards or whatever society standards that are set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like we walk around in these containers of bodies and we don't pause. We don't do that pause. We don't, I mean, I've gotten certainly much better about it and doing breath work.
Yes,
And
yes.
we had Angelina Bass as part of our conference as well. And she helped us like kind of do that. And, she's one who taught me the power of our breath and to pause. And I still incorporate that. And it's just one of those things that you do every day and we take it for granted. It is
Yes.
so powerful. And
Yep.
I see it was Nola said something about meditation too, I believe, earlier and
Yes.
what that's brought for her. Thanks for sharing that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to put up, I missed that. Thank you for bringing that up. So Nola talked about her unfortunate experience with burnout. And
Mm,
that's just really, that goes to show um, how traumatic that impact can be. And then Nola talks
Sure.
about starting to meditate during the pandemic. Thank you, Nola. Thank you for sharing. And thank
Mm.
you for joining us now. I hope you're able to catch the rest of it on replay. Andrea, hello. Thank you for joining.
Hello.
Uh, yeah, and you're absolutely right. We need to talk more about mental health. And then I'm always reminded about the late Sir Ken Robinson's TED talk. And he talked about how, in the context of the speech of his talk, he was talking about this was, I think, the title of his TED talk was "Do Schools Kill Creativity?" And it was one of the most watched TED
Hmm.
talks. And he talked about one of the sentences in that was, academics use their bodies as a mechanism to carry their heads to meetings. And I was just, it was so visual the way he said it. But when you talk about mental health, health somehow we limit it to the physical health. And yes, off late, mental health has gained more. It's becoming less of a taboo, but it's not so in all parts of the world. So in several
Mhm.
parts of the world, it's still a taboo, and we somehow uh, have this sort of uh, very concrete boundary between physical health and mental health, whereas all research and ancient wisdom point to the fact that these two are connected and one has an impact on the other. So absolutely. And what is it that we are doing on a regular basis to take care of ourselves as a whole? Um, Tiffany, I want to invite you here. As we were talking about breath work, what other tools do you use? Top one or two suggestions that you have for others as well that has worked well for you.
Yeah, I have for the last 2 years, I have, it's my self-care checklist, I call it, because I had to be very present about it, and have it be because what I was doing is rushing into the day, checking emails, like work was just like all hours of the day. I was staying up like
Mm,
to just ridiculous hours trying to get it all done, and in this cycle of it's never getting done. There's always more to do. Even right now when I feel the most sound, there's still a whole bunch of stuff to do that's calling me, right? And so what I do is just make sure that I have the first part of the day designated for me. Even if I'm starting my day at a client site, if it's just like taking a longer shower, if it's calling my sister, talking to my sister before I start work, which I did last week, my husband and I both were chatting with her, whatever that looks like, listening to music, hearing a podcast, something for you to start the day. Because I was like reading emails, which isn't that easy to do. Like I was on my bike working out and reading emails on my phone because I was like, I have this technology, I can do this. Yeah, I'm getting, I'm productive. And so we're not always, just because we're doing doesn't mean we're productive. And so that's a lesson that I've learned too. And when we pause and we slow down and we're intentional about our activities, it really opens up creativity. So I
mm,
would say that. The other thing that I love to talk about is just talking to another friend about last night is, trusting ourselves, trusting the process, and then trusting others. And what I mean by that, if you haven't heard me share it before, is there's self-love and pouring into ourselves in these
mm,
containers that has to come first. It just does. And I know that you, Meenakshi, and several people who I know in this audience are givers at heart, and that is okay. We give before we get, as you've heard Meenakshi talk about before, which is powerful. Please keep doing that. But we also, in that giving, we have to make sure that we are full, and trusting the
mm,
process, knowing that, we're good at what we do, or craft, as I call it, and that we're making impact, and that's okay. And that it might be a little bit bumpy, but we're going to learn along the way. And that's where others come in as well. They can help support you, be a sounding board, create safe space when you are having one of those low days or some challenges. And so the three of those, I feel, in that order are, and sometimes they might come out of order, but having that framework has helped me tremendously.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. The slowing down to speed up, and that's helped me a lot. The pause, being intentional, and really taking the time to understand why I'm doing whatever I'm doing, or why what's happening around me, taking the time to understand that. Um, and one thing I did want to share is that creating opportunities for genuine human connection. That's something that's helped me a lot. Um, and building genuine human connections doesn't have to me, it has nothing to do with your location or physical location. And it's something I shared a couple of days ago, on LinkedIn as well. Finding areas of common interest with others, and also um, ensuring that, how shall I put it? Actually, this was something I learned from my own mistake. I think earlier on in my life and in my career in general, um, I would expect all of my needs to be met in one, um, by one job or one set of people that I spent my time with. And over the years, I've realized that the concept of fit for purpose. I've learned now that I can't expect all of my financial, intellectual, emotional, all of my needs to be met by one job, or if in terms of employment. Similarly, I need to have a diverse set of folks that I share time with, and I should not expect, or I cannot expect, just one group, or one or two people to fulfill all of my needs, social needs, or intellectual needs. And in having that, in being intentional about building my network or circle, whatever you want to call it, I realized that one, um, I am, it's richer for me because of the diverse perspectives that I have within the network and the circle. The other thing is, I because that was becoming a source of constant stress, of not having all my needs, because I had all these unrealistic expectations, and not having all
Mhm.
my needs fulfilled by one set of criteria, be it people, or a job or place or whatever it may be. Um, and so seeking that diversity in the people that you share time with on a regular basis, particularly, and also taking a job, whatever it may be, whether you're employed full time, or your business. In our case, for example, you know, why did I get into this? Because I wanted to not have work as the center of my life, right? I wanted to build a life. But if I replace the job with my business, then I'm still doing the same thing. I can't expect different results. And that's
Mhm.
something I have had to remind myself constantly, is that I cannot, just because it's my own business does not mean I'm going to continue to work 20-hour days,
Mhm.
right? Do it when I really have to, but then not make a habit of it. The last thing I want to say is, for me, really understanding and living this. Rest is not a reward. Rest is an activity. So making time for rest, scheduling idle time, right, where you do nothing. You could go for a walk, or if you're like me, sit on the couch and watch some PBS, some documentary. I know that's not doing nothing. I'm engaging with a device, but still, um, I'm not utilizing my brain power. I'm resting in my own way. So figure out what rest looks like for you,
Mhm.
but don't say, "Oh, I'm going to work just because I'm off tomorrow. I'm going to work all day today." So it's not a reward, and I think that's the outcome of living in a sort of this industrialized world. Like, we even use the term productivity so much, right? We measure
Mhm.
ourselves on that. We are not machines. We are not some assembly line in a factory where we have to constantly prove our worth by producing something all the time. The human body is not meant for that.
Mhm.
So, the really thinking about um, diversifying your circle or your network, uh, not overburdening yourself with unrealistic expectations. Cut some slack. And the last thing is, rest is not a reward, it's an activity. So those are three things that have helped me, particularly off late.
I really love that last one.
Thank you.
Mm.
And Gail has something to say here. I so agree. Tech encourages to do more every single minute. Absolutely, says the
Very
person who
true.
had to.
See,
Absolutely.
we're never alone. Gail was
Yeah.
doing it too.
Yes. This reminds me. I did a conversation series with my mentor coach, Priya Ramesh, Conversations That Matter season 2 earlier this year. And we talked about the theme was, we did a 3-part conversation series, and the theme was being human in a digital world. And something
Mm.
Priya said just stuck with me. She said, and from her own experience, and she said, I fill every gap with a gadget.
Mm.
And it happened because it came up because we had agreed to meet to prep for the live stream. And she said, Meenakshi, while I was waiting for you, I had a minute or two and I decided to look at my phone, and I thought I could look at something. I couldn't just sit, she said.
Mm.
So that's exactly what Gail's comment reminded me, filling every gap with a, yeah, tech encourages us to do. But we built that tech. So we have to be really careful about what is it that who is this tech really helping? And, anything in excess is a vice. So
Yeah, we're just because we feel like we're being wasteful, right? And again, back to generations, we were taught you don't waste stuff, like there's not infinite amounts of money or things, right? And so I think that there's that. But there is power in rest. That's why they say rest is resistance, right? And I think the other thing you said about Priya, there's another piece on like meetings and effective meetingness that you said mentioned the name Priya, and I think that from the employer side, like making sure that you're allowing for time for people to rest, that you're not making these unreasonable hours expectations, or that you have the flexibility built into the day so people aren't feeling that. Because the reality is people want productivity, they want to make their dollars, right? But you're not getting that if you're not getting people's full capacity. You're burning them out, and it's not a good thing.
absolutely. And oh, what you said just now reminded me of another conversation that I had with Lakshmi and Anjali. You know them.
Yeah, I do.
Right. So, one of the things that came up in our conversation was that, uh, as much as we talk about the industrialize, our practices in the workplace being rooted in the industrial era, factories have scheduled downtime for their machines.
Mm-hmm.
The cars and the vehicles we drive or ride, we take them for maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow we've forgotten to incorporate those aspects into our lives as human beings, right? And like we wait till the check engine light is flashing red, and
Yeah, the oil's burnt up, like the car won't move, right?
yes, yes. So we talked about how about we do that maintenance, regular maintenance schedule. How about we put ourselves on one of those? That was
Yeah,
the analogy that we were drawing on.
that's
Uh,
perfect.
yeah, I see Sajit here. Thank you for joining, Sajit.
Yes.
We have to rename burnout to something more classy. Why would we do that? Just teasing. Even with what it's called, we seem to um, make it such an integral part of our lives, although it shouldn't be. What
Well,
would you name it though, Sajit?
I'm curious. Yes, please make suggestions. And also, I feel like it's become a buzzword and a way for people to feel like it's like a cash cow or to cash in. Like
Mm,
when we look at it from people, process, technology, like this is the work that you and I do every day, and we see the impacts of it every day. And it's kind of like DEIB, where people are doing it for performative purposes, or they're latching on because they're like, oh, everybody's talking about burnout. Like that detracts from navigating it, helping prevent it, from all the great research and literature that's out there to help prevent it and help people get through it. So it's just that's something that's been like really irking me. lately. All of a sudden,
Mm.
everyone's a burnout expert, and we don't
Yes.
consider ourselves experts. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, is this like the new jam for folks that they found a way
Mm.
to be a cash cow?
Yes. Yes. Totally. And And I want to take a minute to expand on that, Tiffany. You made a great point, a good call out. When we did the conference and we came up with this topic, for us, it's always for us. First of all, any work that we do, it's always about how are we supporting our community and our clients,
Mhm.
and we are always about making it action oriented, um, providing enough context, information, um, insights, strategies, tools, whatever you want to include there. But then the idea is that folks come to our conference and then walk away with really easy to implement, actionable next steps, if you will, that they can implement right away from the next day. That's always our intent with our conferences, and that's how we're doing this follow up on the burnout conversation as well. Um, there's a lot of, and that's I'm glad you called that out, because and Gail agrees here, saying
Mhm.
yeah, it's becoming a buzzword and we're missing out on the real issues. Absolutely. And that's been our intent, that let's, yes, let's talk about it, but also make sure that it's not something so difficult to comprehend or unpack that we don't take any action on improving our
Mhm.
current situation. So for us, that's always the goal. Um, and this is another great question,
Mhm.
Gail. What are we doing consciously and unconsciously that might be adding to our stress rather than relieve it, even with the tech? Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
see, FOMO is a prime example, fear of missing out.
Oh
And
gosh. Yeah.
right, and uh, with social media, with everything being literally at our fingertips, we have our brains are on an overload at all times of day. And
Mhm.
even if we are physically not doing anything, just check in with ourselves and think about how hard it is for our brains to shut off.
Mhm.
So, how do you bring that? How do you become aware of what is it that you're doing, and how you're being? That calls for a lot of um, hard work in today's times, I would
Hard
say.
work. Yes,
Yeah.
but worthy work.
Yes. Uh, Sajid says to give it less
Yes.
hype. Yes.
Can we like plaster this at every workplace? Thank you,
Yep.
Sajith.
Yes, mental health
Yes.
trumps any other achievement. Absolutely, absolutely. And I think here's where, going back to ancient wisdom that's available to us, in really going back to that and redefining what work looks like, what work needs to be, and making sure that we all have the opportunity, the time and space to make work a part of life and not the other way around.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we as leaders, you have that power. You have the authority to be able to shape things the right way. So we're inviting you to reflect on your current programs, policies, who are the people who are in service to your own clients and communities.
absolutely. Oh my God, I just looked at the time. I can't believe it's already been an hour. Oh God. This has been such a great conversation. And as we begin to wrap up, Tiffany, I'd love to hear your parting words.
I'm just, my parting words are just on presence and gratitude. And I appreciate everyone for being here, for sharing your powerful questions, insights. Simran, I see that you're your mentor joining us. Let me know if I did not pronounce your name correctly, but just, remembering to pour into yourselves, and that we can't pour from an empty cup. So cliche, but So true. And Meenakshi, I'll turn it over to you because I know part of, I would love for you to share even how you can help support too. I know there's probably an invitation on the other side of that too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Cannot pour from an empty cup. And I think to me, the additional piece that I would say is to individuals, all you leaders out there. First of all, uh, each of us needs to develop our own self awareness and lean into our self leadership. Lead self before you lead others, and lead from where you are with what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us, we tend to wait for authority to be given to us or some title to be given to us for us to feel like leaders. And my invitation to you is to decouple leadership from titles and positional power. To me, leadership is all about personal power. So, in the context of burnout in the workplace, a couple of things, right? So, for example, don't feel like you have to respond to every single email that pops into your inbox the very next minute that you receive it. If you treat email as your work, then you are never going to get any work done. I understand that company cultures can be this way where everybody manages work through email, but each of us has within our personal agency to alter our behavior instead of reacting, choosing to respond. So these are very small, I wouldn't say simple, they're small tweaks that we can make to our behaviors, which will at least clear up, the personal space that we are in and allow us to breathe and work with intention. So this is just one example of a very small tweak that we can make. And I believe that each of us, we underestimate our personal agency. And I know that our environments have a lot to do with it. So I want to reiterate that burnout is a systemic issue. But I strongly believe that each of us, we have within us the capability and the capacity to start changing it. At least if we start with ourselves. So that's the message I want to leave everyone with. And before we go away, yes, I do have an invitation for everyone um, to help everyone get set up for the upcoming year with clarity and confidence. I've been running this workshop for the last 3 years. It's a vision setting workshop for the upcoming year, and I call it My Story. Write it, own it, live it. So 2024, My Story. It's a live workshop, hands-on workshop. It's happening on Saturday, the 9th of September. I'll put in the registration links and all that in the show notes later. It's the information is also available on my website, northstartwork.com/events. This year it's a half a day workshop, and then what you're going to walk away with is your personalized storyboard for 2024. You are also going to have the opportunity to have a follow up one-on-one coaching conversation with me. So I provide that wraparound support after the workshop, and then of course it's a small cohort of not more than 10 people. So you also walk away with a cohort of accountability partners who you can continue to keep in touch throughout the year as you work towards your intentions that you have set to craft your vision for 2024. So if you're interested, you can DM me or you can go to my website to register. So it's happening this Saturday, the 9th of December, 9 to 1 Eastern time. And that is one of the ways in which I support my clients and community to really dig into their self-leadership, personal agility, and set themselves up for success that way. So look forward to seeing you there. And thank you, Tiffany, for the opportunity for me to plug that in.
Of course. Thanks for all you do. It's so connected. And I love the work you do and supporting it and being your partner and a community collaborator and your friend. So thank you for sharing that for those who
Absolutely.
may be interested.
Yep. And Sajid, I totally, yes, thank you for reframing it so beautifully.
Hmm. Wow. We're so grateful for you all. Thank you for sharing here live and on Team Replay and so many places that we're streaming right now. So
Yes,
share us, if you have other thoughts, please share them in the comments. We are wishing you a wonderful day and we're so grateful you joined us here. And yeah, if you're interested in Meenakshi's program, please reach out to her.
absolutely. And thank you, everyone. Happy December, and I know several parts of the world, several of us are celebrating different holidays and festivals throughout this month. So happy holidays to everyone. And we know that we live in a terribly, terribly volatile world. So here's wishing all of you peace and well-being, and let's work together to make burnout a thing of the past. And thank you all very much. Take care and be well. Bye for now.